Need for Speed Underground 2. Released in 2004 by Electronic Arts as part of their long-running Need for Speed franchise. This would be the third game that got released on the PlayStation 2, but it wouldn't be the last, as 5 more games would actually come out on the console, with the last being Need for Speed Undercover. Now, this was one of my favorite games growing up as a kid, and really made me love the arcade racing genre. Now, taking a look at the manual, you'll see a blue EA logo banner at the bottom that was featured on the majority of their non-sports titles, things like the Sim Sports or their 007 games. And once we open up the manual, you'll get your standard warnings, but there's one that you won't really see on anything today, being a warning for playing on a projection TV. Let me know if you ever had one of those projection TVs growing up. I had some growing up personally, but I couldn't imagine having one today. Now, starting around this kind of era of gaming, the 6th gen, you'll start to see more of the tutorials and the loading screens and before playing, so a lot of the details covered in the manual were actually explained in-game, unlike some other games before this era. This also includes a story, which has kind of a brief introduction here, talking about the underground racing scene of the fictional city of Bayview, while also mentioning some of the new racing modes. My favorite being the downhill drift events. I remember having a Mazda Miata, one of the starting cars that I made specifically for those drift events. But then I had a Hummer for getting a car to meet like the style requirements at certain points during the game. Now, one thing I never did as a kid was actually play online, but from what we could see here in the manual, it did require an EA account, and then there were rankings for each different type of event and how far you were in the story of the game, which I thought was actually pretty neat. And speaking of that EA account, on the very back of the manual, there's a little code to register your game to your EA account, which probably long expired, but a great racing game series at its peak with this entry. Have you ever played